I am Gloria. I am 68 years old, a retired industrial architect who spent 40 years calculating load-bearing limits and stress fractures in high-rise steel. I have learned that the most dangerous structural failures don't happen in concrete or iron, they happen in bloodlines. I calculated that giving my daughter and her husband a debt-free life and a safety net of $175,000 would secure their future and my legacy. I was wrong. The math was flawed. They took the safety net, cut the ropes, and used the proceeds to finance a vacation meant to celebrate my exclusion. They thought they were leaving behind a senile, lonely old woman who would simply wait by the phone for scraps of affection. They didn't account for the fact that I still hold the deed to the ground they are trying to build on. They didn't know that the helpless retiree they lied to is the same woman who designed the cage they are about to walk into. By tomorrow morning, their paramount dream will be nothing but rubble, and I will be the one holding the demolition charges. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from, or what time it is for you. The warning sign didn't come with a siren or a red light. It came with the chirp of a cell phone cutting through the scent of cedar and wood glue. I was in my workshop, a converted garage where I spent my retirement building scale models of Victorian row houses. It was a hobby that required a steady hand and absolute focus. Two things I prided myself on retaining despite my age. I was currently applying a microscopic layer of varnish to the facade of a 150 scale brownstone. The phone buzzed against the workbench, vibrating a chisel dangerously close to the edge. I wiped my hands on a rag, careful not to get any varnish on the screen, and looked at the caller ID. Melissa. A reflex of warmth hit my chest. My daughter, my only child. Since Vivian passed 3 years ago, these calls were the pilings that held my week up above the waterline. I slid the answer button and put the phone to my ear, already smiling. "Hi, honey," I said, keeping my voice light. "I was just thinking about you. I found that old travel journal Vivian kept from '95, the one where she listed all the spots in Montego Bay she wanted to visit." "Hey, Mom." The warmth in my chest cooled instantly. Her voice wasn't right. It was flat, sterile. It sounded like she was reading from a teleprompter in a room full of lawyers. There was no background noise, no grandkids screaming, no television, no clatter of dishes, just a dead, airless silence. "Is everything all right?" I asked, setting the rag down. "How are the kids?" "The kids are fine," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Mom, listen, I don't have much time. I'm calling about the trip." The family pilgrimage to Montego Bay in Jamaica. It was supposed to be our memorial for Vivian. I had paid for everything, first-class tickets, a beachfront villa, a private catamaran charter. It was going to be the first time we were all together in a place Vivian had loved. "What about it?" I asked. I was just about to confirm the menu with the private chef. "I know Kenneth hates cilantro, so I made sure we can't go," she interrupted. The words hung in the dusty air of the workshop. I blinked, looking at the intricate detailing of the model house. "What do you mean you can't go?" "The flight is in 3 days, Melissa. Everything is booked. It's non-refundable." "I know, Mom, I know." She let out a sigh that sounded rehearsed. "It's Kenneth's job. The market is just incredibly volatile right now. His firm is doing a restructuring. If he leaves for 2 weeks, he might not have a desk to come back to." I frowned. Kenneth worked in mid-level logistics. It wasn't exactly Wall Street high-frequency trading. Restructuring? He didn't mention anything about that at dinner last Sunday. "It happened yesterday," she lied. I could hear the lie. It had a specific frequency, a slight pitch elevation at the end of the sentence. "And it's not just that. The house. We found a leak in the roof, a bad one. We have to get it fixed before the rainy season starts, or we're looking at structural damage. It's going to cost a fortune." I instinctively switched into architect mode. "A leak where? Near the chimney flashing or the valley? I can come over and look at it. I can probably patch it myself until..." "No." The refusal was sharp, almost panicked. She dialed it back instantly. "I mean, no, Mom. You shouldn't be climbing on roofs at your age. We have a contractor, but between the job insecurity and the roof estimates, we just can't justify a luxury vacation right now. We need to be responsible." Responsible. I repeated the word. It felt heavy coming from her. "Melissa, I paid for the trip. It's zero cost to you. If the roof is the issue, I can help." "How much is the estimate?" "5,000. 10. I can write a check today." "It's not about the money." She snapped, then silence. She realized she had broken character. It's about the principle, Mom. We need to handle this as a family. We need to stay here and manage our affairs. We can't be sipping Mai Tais while our life is falling apart. So, you're canceling the whole thing. We have to. I'm sorry. Maybe next year. Maybe when things are more stable. Next year, I said. Right. I have to go. Mom, the contractor is calling on the other line. I love you. I love you, too, I said. The line went dead. I didn't put the phone down immediately. I stood there holding it against my ear, listening to the absolute silence of the connection. I looked at the model house. It was perfect, precise. Every window trim was accurate. But as I looked at it, I didn't see a house. I saw a distraction. My daughter had just lied to me. I didn't know why, and I didn't know what the truth was, but I knew the architecture of a lie when I saw it. The roof, the job. It was a facade, a cheap plywood false front designed to hide something ugly. I placed the phone on the workbench. My hand was steady, but inside a support beam had just snapped. The house felt too big that evening. It was a 3-story Victorian brownstone I had designed myself 30 years ago. It was built to hold noise, Christmas parties, running feet, arguments, music. Now with just me in it, it acted like an echo chamber. I ate a sandwich over the sink, not bothering with a plate. The conversation with Melissa played on a loop in my head. Market volatility, roof leak. I walked into the living room and sat in my leather armchair. I opened my laptop. I wasn't a digital native, but I was methodical. I knew how to navigate systems. I logged into the airline's portal. I pulled up the 5 passengers: Gloria Patterson, Melissa Hayes, Kenneth Hayes, and the 2 grandkids, Jasmine and Zoe. The screen refreshed. Status, confirmed. I frowned. If they were canceling, why hadn't they canceled the tickets? Maybe she hadn't gotten around to it yet. I clicked on the passenger details tab. My breath hitched. The names weren't Melissa, Kenneth, Jasmine, and Zoe anymore. The names had been changed. The change fee had been paid yesterday. Passenger 1, Melissa Hayes. Passenger 2, Kenneth Hayes. Passenger 3, Diane Hayes. Passenger 4, Walter Hayes. I stared at the screen. The grandkids had been removed. In their place were Kenneth's parents, Diane and Walter. They hadn't canceled the trip. They had kicked me out. They had kicked me out, removed my grandchildren, and invited Kenneth's parents to take my place on the vacation I had paid for. The vacation that was supposed to honor Vivian. I felt a physical blow to my gut, a nausea that made the sandwich rise in my throat. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. In, out. Why? Why go to such lengths? Why the elaborate lie about the roof and the job? If they wanted to go with his parents, they could have just asked. It would have hurt, yes, but this was theft. This was a hostile takeover of a family memory. My computer pinged a notification from social media. I rarely used Facebook, keeping it only to see photos of the grandkids, but I had notifications set for tagged photos. Diane Hayes tagged Melissa Hayes in a post. I moved the cursor. My hand was shaking now, not from age, but from a cold, vibrating rage. I clicked the link. The photo filled the screen. It was bright, saturated, blue water, white sand, green palms. The location tag read, Round Hill Hotel and Villas, Montego Bay. They were already there. The roof leak lie was told from the airport lounge, or maybe from the hotel lobby. In the center of the photo, Melissa was laughing, holding a glass of amber liquid. Kenneth was next to her, wearing a floral shirt I had never seen, looking tan and smug. Diane and Walter were on the flanks, raising their glasses to the camera. I looked closer at the glasses. They weren't drinking the Hotel Well spirits. They were drinking from a bottle sitting on the table in the foreground. Appleton Estate 21. I had pre-ordered that bottle. I had called the concierge 3 weeks ago. I had told them, please have a bottle of Appleton Estate 21 ready for our arrival dinner. It was my wife's favorite for special toasts. Diane Hayes was drinking Vivian's rum. She was drinking my grief. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the laptop. I sat there frozen as the realization crystallized into something hard and sharp. This wasn't just selfishness. This was erasure. They were erasing me. I was the financier, the wallet, the resource, but I wasn't the family. I looked at Melissa's face in the photo. She looked happy, relieved even. The burden of the old woman was gone. I stood up. My knees popped, but I didn't feel the pain. I walked to the hallway closet where I kept the safe. I spun the dial. Left 30, right 15, left 04. The tumblers clicked. I opened the heavy steel door and took out a stack of documents. My will, the deed to the house, the investment portfolio. I carried them back to the desk. I turned on the desk lamp, pushing the laptop aside. I wasn't an emotional woman. I was an architect. When a building has a rotten foundation, you don't paint over the cracks. You condemn it. You bring in the wrecking ball. But first, I needed to know the full extent of the rot. The next morning, I didn't sit in my grief. I moved. I needed to understand the why. Greed was the obvious answer, but the specific mechanics of the lie, the job instability, bothered me. Kenneth was a mediocre logistics manager. He didn't have the ambition for a coup unless someone was whispering in his ear. I started digging into public records. If Kenneth was restructuring, there would be filings. I searched his name in the state business registry. Nothing under Kenneth Hayes. I searched Melissa. Nothing. Then, I tried a different angle. I remembered a conversation from 6 months ago. Kenneth had been bragging about a side hustle involving real estate. He had been vague, shutting down when I asked for details. I searched for recent LLC formations using their home address. Bingo, Paramount Estates LLC, registered 3 months ago. Agents, Kenneth Hayes, Melissa Hayes. But there was something odd. The principal business address wasn't their home. It was listed as 1820 Dock Street, Unit 4. I knew that district. It was the old manufacturing sector south of the rail yards, down by the waterfront. It wasn't a place for up-and-coming real estate moguls. It was a place for scrap metal and warehouses. I grabbed my keys. I needed to see it. The drive took 45 minutes. I took my old Ford pickup, the one I used for hauling materials. It fit the neighborhood better than my sedan. The roads turned from asphalt to cracked concrete. Weeds grew through the fissures, waist high. I turned onto Dock Street. It was a corridor of rusted corrugated metal and chain-link fences, topped with razor wire. Number 1820 was a cinder block bunker with a faded sign that read Quick Fix Auto Shop. I parked across the street. My heart rate slowed. This didn't make sense. Kenneth was terrified of getting his shoes dirty. What was he doing here? I watched the building for 10 minutes. A stray dog trotted past. No luxury cars. No suits. I got out of the truck. I was dressed in work boots and a canvas jacket. I looked like a contractor. I walked up to the side door of Unit 4. The door was metal, dented. I tried the handle, locked. I walked around the back. There was a window painted over with black paint, but the glass was cracked. I used my pocket knife to scrape away a flake of paint. I appeared inside. I expected to see renovation materials, maybe a secret office. I saw dust. It was empty, completely empty, except for a folding table and a single chair in the center of the room. On the table, there was a stack of mail. I looked closer. The mail slot on the front door was overflowing. This wasn't an office. It was a drop. A wave of unexpected pity hit me. Was Kenneth being scammed? Had he gotten involved with some predatory get-rich-quick seminar that made him rent a fake office to look legitimate? Hey you. I spun around. A man in a grease-stained jumpsuit was standing by the auto shop bay, holding a tire iron. He didn't look friendly. Can I help you? I asked, keeping my voice calm. This is private property. What are you looking at? I'm looking for Paramount Estates, I said. My son-in-law runs a business out of Unit 4. The mechanic barked a laugh. It was a harsh, grinding sound. Business kid. Nobody runs business out of there. That's a mail dump. Some fancy boy in a BMW comes by once a week, grabs the letters, and peels out like he's in a movie. Pays in cash. Always looks like he's going to vomit from the smell of the rendering plant next door. A BMW? I asked. Silver 5 Series. Yeah, that's the one. The pity evaporated. Kenneth wasn't the victim of a scam. He was the architect of one. I walked back to the truck. My mind was racing. Why rent a fake office in a slum? Why create an LLC with no assets? I sat in the cab and drummed my fingers on the steering wheel. Think, Gloria. Think like a structural engineer. You build a false front to hide construction. They registered the business at a fake address, so that if I ever looked them up, or if a creditor looked them up, they wouldn't find their home address immediately. Or maybe to hide assets. I looked at the glove compartment. I had a notepad there. I wrote down, Paramount Estates LLC. I needed to follow the money, but I couldn't do that from a truck in the industrial district. I needed tools I didn't have. I needed Elias. The Velvet Room was located in the basement of a brick building downtown. It smelled of stale beer, expensive cologne, and desperation. It was 2:01 p.m., and the place was empty except for the bartender and a man sitting in the back booth typing furiously on a tablet. Elias Turner. I hadn't spoken to Elias in 5 years. I had fired him from my firm for unethical data acquisition. He was a forensic accountant who didn't believe in boundaries. He could find a penny in a haystack, but he usually burned the haystack down to do it. I walked to the booth. Elias didn't look up. He was younger than me, in his late 40s, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. "You're blocking my light, Gloria," he said, still typing. "Hello, Elias." He stopped. He looked up, his eyes narrowing behind rimless glasses. A slow, shark-like smile spread across his face. Well, the moral compass of the architectural world. To what do I owe the pleasure? Did you finally design a building that fell down? "I need a favor," I said, sliding into the booth opposite him. "I don't do favors. I do transactions." He tapped his tablet screen. "And you fired me," loudly. I believe the phrase moral bankrupt was used. I was angry, I said. "And you were hacking a client's server." "I was ensuring we got paid," he corrected. "And we did, but let's skip the reunion tour. You look terrible, Gloria. You look like a woman who just found out the foundation is made of sand." "Who is it? A contractor? A partner?" "My daughter," I said. Elias's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He closed the cover of his tablet. "Family, messy, expensive." "What did she do?" "She stole a vacation. But that's just the surface. She and her husband set up a shell company called Paramount Estates. They're hiding something. I need to know what." "And you want me to peek behind the curtain?" Elias said. "Why should I? I bill $600 an hour, and I'm booked until Christmas." "Because you owe me," I said. "I owe you nothing. I kept your license," I said quietly. "When the board investigated the data breach, I told them it was a software error. I took the hit on my reputation to keep you from going to jail. You kept your CPA license because I kept my mouth shut." Elias stared at me. The ambient jazz music seemed to get louder. He drummed his fingers on the table. "That," he said finally, "is a valid point. I always wondered why you didn't bury me." "I knew you were talented," I said. "Just dangerous." "Dangerous is what you need right now, isn't it?" "Yes." He opened the tablet. "Name of the LLC, Paramount Estates, registered to Kenneth and Melissa Hayes." Elias's fingers flew across the screen. He didn't use Google. He used databases that required multi-factor authentication, and probably a few backdoors he had installed himself. "Paramount Estates. Bland name. Amateur," Elias muttered. "Registered 3 months ago. No income. No employees. But," he paused. "Hello, what?" "They have a pending credit inquiry. Big one. Commercial line of credit." He tapped a few more keys. "National Bank of Commerce. They're trying to secure a Tier 1 development loan. $3 million. $3 million. I choked. "They don't have that kind of collateral. Their house is mortgaged to the hilt." "Correct," Elias said. "The bank flagged it. High risk. But, here it is." The loan officer put a contingency on the approval. He spun the tablet around so I could see it. It was a digital copy of a loan term sheet. "Approval contingent upon liquid cash injection of 5% of total loan value to be held in escrow." 5%, Elias calculated, of $3.5 million. $175,000, I whispered. The number hit me like a physical slap. $175,000. That was the exact amount I had in my liquid savings account, the emergency fund. I had told Melissa about it 6 months ago during a moment of vulnerability when I was worried about my own health. I had told her, "I keep $175,000 liquid, just in case something happens to me. So you don't have to wait for probate." They weren't just asking for money, they were targeting a specific account. "They need $175,000 cash to trigger the $3 million loan," Elias said, reading the screen. "Without it, the deal dies in." He checked the date. 5 days. "That's why they canceled the trip," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "They couldn't be in Jamaica. They needed to be here, to corner me." "Corner you?" "They're going to ask me for it," I said. "They're going to spin some story about ruin and despair. They need my money to buy their ticket to the big leagues." Elias looked at me, a strange expression on his face. It wasn't sympathy. It was professional admiration for the scam. "It's a leverage play. They use your money to get the bank's money to build the project. If it works, they're rich. If it fails, the bank takes the collateral," I said, "and the cash deposit is the first thing to go." "Exactly. They're gambling with your retirement." I sat back in the booth. The jazz saxophone wailed. "Thank you, Elias." "Don't thank me," he said, closing the tablet. "Just tell me one thing. What are you going to do?" I looked at my hands. They were calloused from working with wood and steel. Strong hands. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve," I said. Elias grinned. Now that is the Gloria Patterson I wanted to work for. The meeting with Marcus Webb was short. Marcus was my estate attorney, a man who wore bow ties and believed in the sanctity of the written word. When I told him what I wanted to do, he took off his glasses and cleaned them for a full minute. Gloria, he said softly, this is irrevocable in spirit, if not in law. Once you do this, there is no going back to Sunday dinners. There are no Sunday dinners, Marcus, I said. There's only a theatrical performance where I pay for the ticket. Very well, he said. He opened his laptop. Dictate the terms. I spent the next 2 hours crafting the language. I didn't want standard boilerplate. I wanted precision. I wanted the amendment to the trust to be a structural cage that they could see but never escape. I left his office with a heavy blue binder under my arm. It weighed 3 pounds. It felt like 10 tons. When I got home, I began the staging. I vacuumed the living room, lines into the carpet, perfect parallel tracks. I dusted the mantel. I took the photo of Melissa's graduation, the one where she looked so innocent, and moved it to the center of the coffee table. I went to the kitchen and took out the bag of Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee beans. I only bought them once a year. I poured them into the grinder. The noise was deafening, a mechanical scream that pulverized the beans into dust. I brewed a pot. The smell filled the house. It smelled like wealth. It smelled like safety. I sat in my armchair. I checked my watch. 2 p.m. Sunday, they would be here in 10 minutes. I practiced my face in the mirror of the hallway. I relaxed my jaw. I let my shoulders slump. I widened my eyes slightly. I needed to look like a woman who was worried, a woman who was lonely, a woman who was waiting to be saved by her family. I needed to look like a victim. The tires crunched on the gravel. Driveway at 2:09 p.m. I watched from behind the sheer curtains. They were driving a black Mercedes S. It was a loaner, or at least they couldn't afford it. It was shiny and aggressive. Melissa got out first. She was wearing a beige dress, modest, something she would wear to church. She looked tired, makeup applied to simulate dark circles under her eyes. Kenneth got out of the driver's side. He was wearing a blazer, but no tie. He carried a leather portfolio case like it was the nuclear codes. I opened the door before they rang the bell. Hi, Mom, Melissa said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. She surged forward and hugged me. She smelled like hotel shampoo, the little bottles you steal from the maid's cart. Round Hill shampoo. Melissa, I said, hugging her back weakly. I'm so glad you came. I've been well. The house is very quiet. We missed you so much. She lied into my shoulder. Hey, Gloria, Kenneth said, stepping into the foyer. He gripped my hand. His palm was damp. Thanks for seeing us. I know it's short notice. Come in, I said. I made coffee, the good stuff. We sat in the living room. The dynamic was set. I was in the armchair. They were on the sofa, sitting close together, a united front. The portfolio was on the coffee table between us. So, I said, blowing on my coffee, you said on the phone it was urgent, a life-changing opportunity. Melissa nodded. She looked at Kenneth. He was the lead actor today. Gloria, Kenneth began, unzipping the case. You know how hard we've been working. The logistics game. It's a dead end. But we found something. A way out. He pulled out a glossy brochure. It was printed on heavy cardstock. Paramount Estates was embossed in gold foil on the cover. We're moving into development, Kenneth said, his voice dropping an octave to sound authoritative. We've secured a prime location in the South Waterfront District. It's gritty now, but the city is rezoning it next year. We're going to build luxury lofts, the Foundry. He slid a rendering across the table. It showed glass balconies and happy digital people drinking espresso. It's beautiful, I said softly. It is, Melissa said, leaning forward. And it's for the family, Mom. For Jasmine and Zoe. So they can have trust funds. So they can have the life Vivian wanted for them. The mention of Vivian was a sharp needle. I kept my face blank. We have the plans, Kenneth said. We have the contractor lined up. We even have the bank on board. They love the project. They've pre-approved a $3 million line of credit. $3 million. I whistled. That's a lot of money, Kenneth. It is, but there's a catch, Kenneth said. He leaned back, the classic salesman's pullback. To unlock the capital, we need to show skin in the game. The bank requires a cash deposit. Liquid funds. How much? I asked. Kenneth hesitated. He looked at Melissa. She nodded encouragingly. $175,000, Kenneth said. He said it fast, like ripping off a bandage. It's a loan, Mom. Melissa added quickly. Strictly a loan. We'll pay you back with interest as soon as the first units sell. 18 months tops. We don't have that kind of cash sitting around. And if we don't pay the deposit by Friday, the deal evaporates. Someone else gets the land. I looked at them. I looked at the brochure. It was a prop. The land in the industrial district was likely cheap, but the construction costs would bury them. They weren't developers. They were tourists in a shark tank. But that wasn't the point. The point was that they had partied in Montego Bay while planning how to extract my savings. 175,000, I repeated slowly. That's my entire emergency fund, Melissa. That's everything. We know, she said, and we wouldn't ask if we weren't 100% sure. Mom, please, this is our future. This is the legacy you always talked about building. Legacy, they kept using that word. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the oak tree in the front yard. I let the silence stretch. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 10, 20. I could hear them shifting on the sofa. The leather creaked. They were sweating. I turned around. I put a look of resignation on my face. A look of a mother who cannot say no. I understand, I said. Melissa let out a breath that was half sob. Oh, Mom, thank you. You won't regret this. I know, I said. Building a future, it's the most important thing. I can't let you miss this chance. Kenneth was grinning now, the shark smile. You're the best, Gloria. Seriously, we'll draw up the promissory note tonight. No need, I said. They froze. I don't want a promissory note, I said, walking toward my study. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. I've already prepared the paperwork. You have? Kenneth asked, confused. I anticipated you might need help eventually. I called out from the hallway. I saw this coming. I entered the study. I opened the drawer. The blue binder was there. I picked it up. It was time to spring the trap. I walked back into the living room. I didn't sit down. I stood at the head of the coffee table, looming over them. I placed the blue binder on the table. Thud. What is this? Melissa asked, reaching for it. It's the future, I said. Open it. She flipped the cover. Kenneth leaned in. Amendment to the Vivian Patterson Revocable Living Trust. I realized, I said, my voice changing. The waiver was gone. The confused old woman tone was gone. My voice was now the voice of a site foreman, shouting over a jackhammer, that giving you cash is a temporary fix. You need permanent security. I don't understand, Melissa stammered, scanning the legal text. Read Clause 4, Section B, I commanded. Kenneth pointed a shaking finger at the page. He read aloud, upon the execution of this amendment, the grantor, Gloria Patterson, hereby irrevocably transfers the deed to the property at 2847 Chestnut Street and the entirety of the liquid assets in the account ending in. He stopped. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. You're giving us the house and the accounts. Keep reading, I said coldly. Transfers to the Vivian Patterson Foundation for Widows. The silence that followed was absolute. It sucked the oxygen out of the room. What? Melissa whispered. Charity. Read the rest, I said. Kenneth swallowed hard. The beneficiary, Melissa Hayes, is hereby removed from all inheritance and claimed to the estate due to, he choked on the words. Due to what, Kenneth? I barked. Due to premeditated emotional fraud and gross violation of familial trust, he whispered. Melissa dropped the binder. It hit the floor. Mom, what is this? Is this a joke? Is Montego Bay a joke? I asked. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like a special effect. She went gray. The Round Hill, I said. The Appleton Estate 21. The invoice found in the dumpster at 1820 Dock Street. Did you enjoy the view, Melissa? Did the rum taste like victory? She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. You knew. I knew before you even got on the plane, I said. I tracked the flight changes. I saw the photos. I hired a forensic accountant to find your loan application. I know you need $175,000 by Friday or you lose your paramount dream. I leaned down, bracing my hands on the table, getting right in their faces. And I know that you were willing to look me in the eye. Tell me you were broke. Tell me you were afraid for your jobs. All while you were burning my money on a beach in Jamaica with his parents. I pointed at Kenneth. Kenneth started to stand up. Gloria, look, we can explain. It was a business trip. We took my parents because... Sit down, I roared. Kenneth sat. There is no explanation, I said, straightening up. The amendment is signed. It is notarized. It is filed. As of this morning, this house belongs to the foundation. I retain a life estate. meaning I can live here until I die. But the moment my heart stops, the locks change, and you get nothing. Not a dime, not a shingle. You can't do this, Melissa wailed. Tears were streaming down her face now. Real tears of terror. Mom, please, we'll lose everything. The bank, we spent our savings on the architects. If we don't get the deposit, we default on the pre-development costs. We'll go bankrupt. Then you better start selling those leased cars, I said, and maybe return that floral shirt, Kenneth. It looks ridiculous. Melissa stood up, her legs shaking. She reached for me. Mom, please, I'm your daughter. My daughter would never have erased me, I said quietly. My daughter would never have used her mother's memory as a sales tactic. The reality hit her. The weight of the loss. The $175,000 was gone. The inheritance was gone. The safety net was gone. She swayed. Her eyes rolled back. She crumpled, hitting the carpet with a soft thud. Melissa, Kenneth screamed. He scrambled off the sofa, shaking her. Melissa, wake up. He looked up at me, his face twisted in hate. You monster. You gave her a heart attack. Call 911. She didn't have a heart attack, I said, not moving. She fainted. It happens when structural integrity fails under load. Melissa woke up a minute later. She sat up, weeping hysterically. Kenneth held her, whispering frantic promises that I knew he couldn't keep. Get out, I said. Kenneth stood up, helping Melissa to her feet. This isn't over, Gloria. I'll sue you. I'll contest the trust. I'll prove you're senile. Try it, I said. I have the emails. I have the bank records. I have the testimony of Elias Turner, who is currently compiling a dossier on your fraudulent loan application to send to the National Bank of Commerce. Kenneth froze. You wouldn't, if you don't leave my property in 30 seconds, I said. I will hit send and you won't just be bankrupt. You'll be in federal prison for bank fraud. It was a bluff, mostly. Elias hadn't prepared the dossier yet, but Kenneth didn't know that. Fear replaced the hate in his eyes. Pure, primal fear. Come on, Melissa, he said, pulling her arm. We're leaving. Mom, she sobbed, looking back at me. I turned my back on them. I looked at the photo of Vivian on the mantel. I heard the door open. I heard the shuffle of feet. I heard the door slam. I walked to the window. I watched them get into the Mercedes. Kenneth fumbled with the keys, dropping them once. He started the car and peeled out of the driveway, gravel spraying onto the lawn. They drove fast, reckless, running from the ruin they had created. I watched them disappear around the bend. I walked to the front door and threw the deadbolt. Click. The sound echoed through the house. It was a sharp, final sound. I looked around the living room. The coffee was cold. The brochure for Paramount Estates was still on the table. I picked it up and walked to the fireplace. I lit a match. I held the flame to the glossy corner of the brochure. It caught quickly, the gold foil curling and blackening. I tossed it into the grate and watched it burn until it was nothing but ash. The house was silent. But it wasn't the empty silence of before. It was the silence of a clean slate. The rot was gone. The foundation was secure. 30 days later, the air was different. I was sitting in seat 1A on a flight to Athens, connecting to Rhodes. I held a glass of champagne. Real champagne, not the stuff they serve in economy. I checked my phone one last time before takeoff. No messages. I had blocked their numbers. Marcus Webb had informed me that they were filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They had lost the deposit on the land. They had lost the lease on the Mercedes. They were moving into a rental apartment in the valley. Justice is a harsh architect. It builds exactly what you design. The plane began to taxi. I looked out the window at the tarmac. I saw a young couple struggling with their carry-on bags 2 rows back. The man was stressed, sweating. The woman was trying to calm a crying baby. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stood up. The flight attendants started to protest. Ma'am, we are taxiing. One moment, I said. I walked back to the young couple. Here, I said, reaching for the heavy bag the man was trying to jam into the overhead bin. Let me help. I slotted it in with a practiced twist. Oh, thank you, the man exhaled, looking shocked. Thank you so much. Don't mention it, I said. I walked back to my seat. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't bitter. I was still Gloria Patterson. I still helped people who needed it. I just had better criteria for who deserved it. The engines roared. The thrust pinned me to the seat. We lifted off, climbing above the clouds, heading east. I pulled a photo from my pocket. It was an old one. Vivian and me standing in front of the Parthenon in 1980. We're going to Rhodes. Vivian, I whispered, just like we planned. I raised my glass to the window, to the blue sky, to the horizon. 2 foundations, I said. And for the first time in 3 years, the structure of my life felt sound. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.